previous night, Annabelle, an 11-year-old girl, went camping with her friends in the neighborhood backyard. They spent the entire night in the tent to avoid the cold rain. Aside from the light storm, it was a normal summer night. Her and her friends told scary stories, and they laughed to avoid showing their fear, and they laughed to avoid showing their fear, and they were swallowing due to their own stories. One story stood out to Annabelle. The story of a real Pokemon, a Hypno stealing the dreams of children. Needless to say, Annabelle didn't get much sleep that night. The girls woke up and Belle felt dizzy. The rain had stopped, but her forehead was a little wet. She assumed some rain leaked in, and she was dizzy due to the lack of sleep. All the girls went back to their homes, including Belle. She sat in silence and ate her breakfast. She was unable to remember what happened before she fell asleep. She thought about all those things her and her friends would have done. Again, she put it off as a side effect of missing out on sleep. Belle felt a little drowsy the entire day, but it continued on as a normal day. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that she started to remember the events of the previous night when she played Pokemon Yellow version. She was in Lavender Town, and the mysterious tale made her think. She recalled the story of a Hypno eating the children's dreams. It began to storm harder. Then the night before, as Annabelle began dozing off, she was suddenly shaken awake by a fallen sensation. She lay there still, with her eyes open in the pitch blackness of her room. The wind was blowing hard, and all of a sudden, Belle hears scratches at her door. It was the type of scratching one would make with her fingernails. It sounded like metal against glass. Annabelle got up and attempted to turn the light on. As she reached for the switch, a black figure moved past her window in the corner of her eyes. She turned on the lights, but nothing happened. There was a power outage due to the storm. She ran to her mother's room crying, "Hypno is here!" She woke her mother and told her about the camping stories and that she was afraid Belle's mother took it as a joke and angrily sent her back to her room. After telling Belle the Pokemon weren't real, Belle walked slowly to the noiselessly back into her room. She opened her door very slowly. She kept a constant eye on her window. The rain had stopped, but outside remained gloomy. She lay down there and stared at her window for a few hours. The clock struck 3 a.m. when Belle started to fall asleep again. She rolled over to face the door, her body finished turning as she lay there facing a mysterious figure with a dangling medallion. Belle was paralyzed with fear. She couldn't take her eyes off the medallion. She couldn't scream. The creature let out a quiet cry. "Hypno!" And Annabelle was asleep. The next morning, Belle's mother awoke feeling bad about yelling at her daughter. She walked into Belle's room to see her lifeless pale corpse. Her eyes were solid black, as if torched by a fire.